This is a simple treatment of international trade theory based on two very famous theories. The first one is the Ricardian model, and the second is the Heckscher-Ohlin model. The Ricardian model is the one-factor model, one factor of production, that is labor, and the Heckscher-Ohlin model is an extension of that theory based on two factors of production. The Ricardian model has two goods, in this case goods X and Y, one factor of production, labor, and we assume two countries. In order to motivate the idea of international trade, two countries, two goods, one factor of production. So both countries employ labor to produce both of the goods, X and Y. One country would have what Ricardo calls a comparative advantage in industry X and would produce and specialize in good X. And the second country would specialize in good Y. And the country that specializes in good X would export some of what it produces to the second country and import from that second country some of the excess of what that country produces, which is good Y. So once the countries recognize their mutual interdependence, a pattern of trade will be established based on relative factor productivities. That's a simple expression of the Ricardian analysis. And what I'm going to do for the next few minutes is to show you the Ricardian model in the context of the production possibilities frontier with one factor of production. So we say assume one factor of production, labor, assume constant input-output ratios. So we would read this ALY as the amount of labor it takes to produce each unit of good Y, or the average input-output ratio. ALX is the amount of labor it takes in industry X to produce each unit of good X. Again, we're assuming a constant productivity, so these are constants. If the labor demanded in the economy is equal to the labor supplied, and labor is demanded in each of sectors X and Y, we can take LX and multiply and divide by X, in the process creating the input-output ratio times the quantity of X produced. Likewise for industry Y, multiply and divide by Y, so we get the input-output ratio in industry Y times the quantity of Y. Here we rewrite the production possibilities frontier in terms of the labor supply, the input-output ratios in both sectors, and when you look at this particular graphical analysis, you can say that the slope of the production possibilities frontier is given by ALX on ALY, which is the labor in industry X relative to the labor used in industry Y. So this is for one country, and Ricardian analysis assumes that the ratios of labor in X to labor in Y in two countries differs, and this is the motivator for why two countries would trade. If the first country, call it country A, uses a smaller amount of labor in industry X compared to the labor in industry Y, then we would say that country A has a comparative advantage in producing output X because it uses less labor than the other country to produce good X relative to what it uses to produce good Y. We can flip that ratio on its head, and that would imply that the second country would use a smaller amount of labor in industry Y relative to each unit of labor in industry X than the first country. That would form what Ricardo calls the pattern of comparative advantage. That generates the law of comparative advantage, which I need for you to know. Ricardian analysis says that a country will produce and export the good in which it has a comparative or relative advantage in production. Quick summary of Ricardo. The simple ideas that we need to convey is how growth is shown, and if we have fixed input-output ratios and we have more resources, then those increases in resources should push the production possibilities frontier to the right. Notice the intercept on the production possibilities frontier. Quantity of labor is in the numerator. ALY and ALX are constants, so if we increase the amount of labor in the economy, that would take the intercept and push it farther outward, and the slope is still the same, so we show a shift in the production possibilities frontier. When there is more labor, the production possibilities frontier shifts outward to the right. That means that we can produce more of good X or more of good Y along that production possibilities frontier. The second important idea to consider is technological improvement and how technological improvement in one sector would cause the production possibilities frontier to move outward as well. But if the technological improvement is in one industry, we can then produce more of the good that that industry will produce. So if industry Y is the one with the technological improvement, then we expect to be able to produce more of good Y. Of course, if you decided you only wanted this original level of good Y, then you can move across horizontally and see that instead of getting none of good X, now you can produce quantity of good X right here. So you could decide that even though you had technological progress in one industry, you really didn't want any more of that industry's output. And you would use the saved labor to produce more of the other good that you wanted to produce and consume. We have two main ideas in Ricardian analysis: how we show an increase in the quantity of labor and how we show technological improvement, both showing the production possibilities frontier moving to the right, one in a parallel fashion, the other rotating about the pivot point for the industry that did not have any technological improvement.